A baby found a pregnant German shepherd half buried in the mud. What happened next moved everyone to tears, and what followed will absolutely shock you. This is an incredible story of courage, hope, and an unbreakable bond between a silent child and a wounded dog left to die. It begins with pain, but ends with healing, miracles, and a light that no one saw coming. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to like, share, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now take a deep breath, because what you're about to hear might just stay with you forever. The wind carried the scent of wet leaves and distant rain as it rustled through the tired curtains of the small rental house on the edge of Pineville. Autumn had begun to strip the trees bare, painting the town in amber and rust. But inside the house, the chill came not from the weather, but from silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that makes you hold your breath, listen harder, search for the sound that should be there, but isn't. Hannah Marshall moved through the kitchen on autopilot, her fingers trembling slightly as she washed the last of the breakfast dishes. Outside the window, her 5-year-old son, Noah, sat quietly on the back steps, staring at the trees like he always did. Like he was waiting for something, or someone, to emerge from their shadows. He hadn't spoken in 8 months. 8 months of watching his world unravel in a single night. She still remembered the hospital lights, the smell of antiseptic. The doctor's face when he said the words she didn't know would echo forever. He's physically fine, but emotionally the trauma, it's severe. Since then, Noah hadn't said a word, not even to her, not even a whisper. Selective mutism, they called it. Hannah called it grief. But even in his silence, Noah felt everything. She could see it in his eyes, storm-colored and soft. He carried his emotions like a secret language, one only animals seemed to understand. It started small, a squirrel following him from the park, a stray cat curling in his lap within seconds, birds perching near him unafraid. He didn't need to speak. Creatures simply knew him. Mrs. Peterson, their elderly neighbor, used to say, "That boy's got something ancient in him, old souls like his. They don't come around often." Today felt different, though. The air was heavy, not with just the coming rain, but with something unspoken. Hannah couldn't name it, but it scratched at her nerves. She glanced again at Noah, still unmoving, his small frame bundled in a gray hoodie, hood up despite the stillness of the day. The wind tugged at the fabric like it, too, was trying to wake him up. "Noah, baby," she called softly through the screen door, forcing warmth into her voice. "Stay close, okay? Mommy just needs 10 minutes. He didn't answer. Of course not. But he turned, just enough for her to see his profile. Serious, thoughtful. He nodded once, slow and deliberate. She smiled, half in relief, half in ache. That was their language now. Nods, glances, silences. As she stepped outside to hang the laundry, Hannah tried to shake the tightness in her chest. Bills were overdue. She had a double shift tomorrow. The roof still leaked. But none of that scared her as much as the quiet inside her son. She pinned a towel to the line, watching the clouds roll in from the hills. The sky was changing fast, bruising, threatening. And still, a whisper inside her warned, "Today is not like the others." Behind her, leaves rustled. The line snapped in the wind. A towel flapped loose. She turned. Noah was gone. At first it didn't register. Maybe he went inside. She checked the living room. Empty. Kitchen. Empty. Bathroom. Empty. "Noah." Her voice cracked as panic crept up her spine. She rushed to the front door. No sign of him. And then, her heart stopped. The back gate stood open. The forest loomed behind it, dense and dark, swallowing the edge of their property like a mouth half open. Hannah dropped the laundry basket. She sprinted through the grass, feet sliding in the wet earth, hands grasping at branches as she reached the tree line. Her breath came fast and shallow. "Noah!" she cried, louder this time, desperation strangling the word. The forest offered no answer. Only silence, only wind, and the growing drum of thunder somewhere far above. She saw it then, a footprint, tiny, pressed into the mud, pointing inward, into the trees. There were more, spaced unevenly. Her knees went weak. He had gone in, alone. "No, no, no," she whispered, a prayer or a curse, maybe both. She plunged into the woods without hesitation. Branches slapped her face, roots tangled her steps. But she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Images flashed behind her eyes. Noah lost, Noah hurt, Noah falling into the quarry they'd warned about, Noah being found by someone else. Tears blurred her vision as the wind howled louder, trees swaying above like watchers unsure whether to help or stay still. She shouted his name over and over, knowing full well he would not answer. But she shouted anyway, because what else was there to do when your whole world is 5 years old and lost in the woods? Time became meaningless. It might have been 10 minutes. It might have been an hour. Then, just as she thought her legs would give out, she saw it. A flash of red. Noah's jacket. It lay crumpled beside a small hill. And Noah was there too. Kneeling. Digging. His small hands were caked in mud. His hoodie soaked. His face. Hannah's heart broke open at the sight of it, creased with a desperation no child should wear. She ran to him, knees hitting the mud hard. "Noah, baby, what—" Her voice faltered as she saw what he was digging. It wasn't dirt he was playing in. It was a grave, and something inside it was still alive. The rain came suddenly, sharp, cold, and insistent, as if the sky had been holding its breath, waiting for Hannah to kneel beside her son before it broke open. Thunder groaned somewhere above the hills, rolling over them like a warning. The trees shivered. The wind carried the smell of wet soil and something older, like rust and sorrow. But none of that mattered now, because in front of her, half swallowed by mud and leaves, was something breathing. Something alive. A dog. No. A German shepherd. At least what remained of one. Its fur was soaked and caked in muck, ears plastered to its head, belly swollen, legs motionless. And worse, its body wasn't just buried by the elements. It had been intentionally covered, deliberately hidden. Hannah could see the evidence as she reached forward with trembling hands. The mud was packed too densely, too even, like someone had used a shovel. The dog wasn't just lying here. She'd been left here, left to die. "Oh my God," Hannah whispered, her voice breaking on the edges of the words. Beside her, Noah kept digging, silently, desperately. His fingers raw and red, blood mixed with the soil. But still he worked, as if stopping wasn't an option. "Noah," Hannah said softly, trying to touch his arm. He didn't look at her. His eyes were locked on the shepherd's face, and then, finally, Hannah saw why. The dog, she was watching Noah. Not growling, not whimpering, just watching. Her eyes, though clouded with pain, held no fear, only trust. Trust in this small boy with bloody fingers and a silent mouth. As if she knew. As if she had waited just for him. "We need to get her out," Hannah said, her voice firmer now, rooted in something deeper than panic. "We need to help her." She dropped to her knees beside Noah, heedless of the cold mud soaking through her jeans. The rain beat down harder, but they didn't care. Together, mother and son, they clawed at the earth, pulling away handful after handful, inch by inch. The mud was slick, heavy, determined to keep its prisoner, but so were they. Each handful revealed more of her battered body, her ribs showing through matted fur, deep cuts along her legs. And then Hannah saw it, a length of rusted chain coiled around the dog's neck, leading to a stake buried deep beneath her. She wasn't just buried, she was anchored.
"Who did this to you?"
Hannah whispered, her voice raw with disbelief and rage.
"Who could be this cruel?"
The dog made a soft sound, half whimper, half sigh. Her eyes fluttered closed, then opened again. She was still holding on. Noah reached forward with both hands, pressing them gently to her head, his tiny thumbs stroking her between the ears. The dog didn't flinch. She leaned into the touch. Lightning cracked above them. They didn't move. Hannah looked around wildly.
"We need something, anything to dig faster."
But there was nothing nearby. No tools. Just branches and mud and rain. Then Noah tugged at her sleeve, urgently. He pointed at the dog's belly. And Hannah saw it. A ripple. Then another.
"Oh no,"
she breathed, ice flooding her chest. "She's in labor." Panic surged through her, choking. They couldn't do this here. Not in the cold. Not in the rain. Not while the dog was half buried, bound, and bleeding. But time was no longer a luxury. "We have to get her out now," Hannah said, grabbing at the chain with shaking hands. The dog whimpered again, louder this time. Her legs twitched, barely. Hannah followed the chain downward, her fingers slicing through the muck until she felt it, a thick, rusted wire wrapped tight around the dog's hind legs. Her breath caught. The wire wasn't accidental. It was twisted, deliberately cutting into flesh. Someone had made sure she couldn't move. Someone had meant for her to die here, slowly, silently, with her unborn puppies. Hannah's stomach turned, bile rising in her throat. "No," she said aloud. "Not today. Not like this." She reached into her pocket, remembering the multi-tool on her keychain. Small wire cutters, meant for electronics. Not this. But it was all they had. She gripped the tool, lined it up on the twisted wire, and squeezed. The cutter bent. The wire didn't. "Come on," she hissed through gritted teeth, squeezing again. Her hands slipped in the blood and mud. Her fingers ached. Her own skin tore. The dog cried out softly. "I'm sorry," Hannah whispered, tears blurring her vision. "I'm so sorry." Noah's hand reached out, steadied hers. His eyes met hers, calm, determined. "We can do this," they seemed to say. She tried again. This time the wire groaned. Then, snap, gave way. One loop down, another to go. Thunder shook the sky. The rain poured harder, like punishment. Hannah's whole body shook with effort, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. And finally, after what felt like hours, the second wire broke free. The dog's legs were free, but she still couldn't stand. Too weak, too injured, and the chain around her neck padlocked. Hannah tried to yank the stake loose from the earth, but it wouldn't budge. "We'll never lift her like this," she said, panting. Then Noah tugged at her again. He made a motion, looping his fingers as if slipping something over a head. Hannah stared. "You want to try sliding it off?" He nodded, eyes wide with urgency. The dog's neck was thin, her body emaciated. Maybe. Carefully, Hannah worked her fingers under the chain, pulling it upward inch by inch. It caught on her ears. The dog whimpered but didn't resist, just a little more. And then, with one final tug, it came free. She was no longer chained, but she was still fading. Her breathing was shallow. Her eyes fluttered. Her belly rippled again, stronger this time. Another contraction. "Oh, God," Hannah breathed. "We don't have time." She yanked off her flannel shirt, laying it out beside the dog. "We're going to lift her, Noah, together, okay?" He nodded again, small hands already moving into place. 1, 2, 3. They heaved. She was heavier than Hannah expected. Dead weight and pregnant belly and all. But together, somehow, they managed. Through the trees, back down the hill, across the muddy yard. The rain stung their skin, their muscles burned, Their breaths came in sobs. And then, home. Porch. Door flung open. They stumbled inside, soaked, filthy, shivering, but together. And the dog with the ancient eyes and the tattered body, was still breathing, still holding on. Noah knelt beside her, his hand on her head. The dog leaned into him. She was safe. For now. And somewhere in her belly, life was still trying to be born. The bathroom was small, barely enough room for Hannah, Noah, and the dying dog cradled in old towels, but it became a sanctuary, a sacred place. The fluorescent light flickered above them, casting a pale glow on mud-streaked tile. The dog lay in the tub, motionless except for the ragged rise and fall of her ribs. Her fur, matted and clumped with earth, now revealed the angry red wounds where the wire had cut deep. Noah sat on the floor, legs crossed, his small hand resting on the shepherd's head. His touch was gentle, steady. Her ears flicked faintly in response. She wasn't alone anymore, and she knew it. Hannah crouched beside the tub, breathing hard, trying to think, trying not to cry. The adrenaline that had pushed her through the storm now collapsed, leaving her shaking and cold. Her hands bled. Her shirt was ruined. But none of that mattered. "I need help," she whispered to herself. "Real help." She grabbed the phone from the wall and dialed the only number she could think of. Pineville Veterinary Clinic. 4 rings. Then a voice. "Pineville Vet, Dr. Martinez speaking." Relief hit Hannah like a wave. "Dr. Martinez, it's Hannah Marshall. I found a dog. She's hurt. She's pregnant. I think she's about to give birth right now, and she's barely alive." There was a pause, then sharper. "How far along is she?" "I don't know," Hannah said, fighting back tears. "She's contracting. Her breathing's shallow. I can't bring her in. It's storming, and my car's nearly out of gas. Please, can you come here?" Another pause. Then, "Give me your address. I'll be there as fast as I can. Keep her warm. Keep her comfortable." Hannah hung up, sagging against the wall. She looked to Noah. He hadn't moved, but his expression had changed. It was softer, focused, almost hopeful. "She's going to be okay," Hannah whispered, more to herself than to him. "We're going to help her, right?" Noah didn't answer, but he nodded. 15 minutes later, the dog let out a low moan. Hannah rushed back into the bathroom just as another contraction rocked through her body. Noah's hand never left her head, and for the first time since they'd brought her in, her tail moved. Barely. A thump. Soft, but unmistakable. A signal of trust. A signal of life. Hannah knelt beside the tub, brushing the dog's muddy fur away from her face. "You're doing so good, girl," she murmured. "Just hang on. Help is coming." The dog, her eyes warm, amber, ancient, blinked at her slowly, and then a whimper. Not from her. From deep inside. From the life trying to make its way into the world. It felt like hours passed, but it couldn't have been more than 20 minutes when headlights flashed across the window and a car door slammed outside. Moments later, Dr. Martinez stepped into the house, soaked to the bone, a large black medical bag clutched in his hand. "Where is she?" he asked, already moving. "Bathroom," Hannah said, stepping aside. "She's in labor." Dr. Martinez knelt by the tub in silence, his practiced hands moving over the dog's body. "She's been through hell," he muttered. "Wire cuts, malnutrition, infection." He paused. "But she's fighting, and she's not done yet." Noah watched him quietly, unmoving, his hand still resting on her head like a guardian. "What's her name?" Dr. Martinez asked gently. Hannah looked down. "She doesn't have one." "Every fighter deserves a name," he said softly, turning the collar still wrapped around her neck. A nameplate, covered in grime. He wiped it clean. Luna. He read it aloud. Noah's head lifted at the sound.
Luna,
Hannah repeated, softer now.
that's beautiful.
The dog's ears flicked again, and then another contraction, stronger, more urgent. Dr. Martinez reached into his bag. It's time. The next hour passed in a blur of movement and breath and pain and prayer. Hannah held towels. Dr. Martinez worked with careful hands. And Luna, sweet, broken Luna, pushed with everything she had left. And then, finally, a small, slick bundle slid into the world. A puppy, limp, silent. Dr. Martinez wiped it quickly, massaged its tiny chest. Come on, he whispered. Nothing. Hannah felt her stomach twist. Noah's eyes were wide, locked on the tiny, still form. Then, suddenly, he moved. Before anyone could stop him, he leaned over the tub. And for the first time in 8 months, he spoke. One word. Rusty, barely audible, but powerful enough to shake the walls of Hannah's heart. Live. The puppy gasped, a tiny squeak, a wriggle. Its chest rose and fell. Alive. Hannah's hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled over her cheeks. Dr. Martinez looked up in disbelief. You said something, he whispered. Noah didn't answer, but he smiled. A full, radiant, tear-streaked smile, and that was enough. 5 more puppies followed, each a struggle, each a miracle. But it was the 5th that made Hannah cry again, stillborn at first, lifeless, until Noah whispered to it, too. Another gasp, another life. It was as if his voice, the one buried under months of silence, had the power to bring others into the world. And finally, long after midnight, the last puppy was born, the smallest of them all, a runt, with a tiny, unmistakable white star-shaped mark on its chest. The room went still. Even Luna lifted her head to look. 7, Hannah murmured. 7 puppies. Dr. Martinez gently checked each one, then leaned back, exhausted, but smiling. All alive, all strong. It's more than I hoped for. He looked at Luna, her eyes closed now, but her breathing steady. She's incredible. She shouldn't have survived what she went through, but she did. And Hannah looked at Noah, curled up now beside Luna and her puppies, his small hand resting against the little one with the star. Something had awakened in her son tonight, something long dormant, and it had come from love, from courage, from Luna. She sat on the floor beside them, her back against the bathroom wall, the storm still raging outside. But inside? Inside was peace. Inside was life. Inside was a voice, returned by grace, and the beginning of a bond that neither she nor Noah fully understood yet, but would change everything. Forever. Morning broke slowly over Pineville. After the storm, the world felt washed clean. Dew clung to every blade of grass like tiny tears that the night had left behind. The clouds parted just enough to let in a cold, silver light, gentle but distant, as if the sky still wasn't sure if it could trust the earth again. Inside the small rental home, warmth lingered in the quiet rhythm of new life. Luna slept on a bed of blankets in the living room, her 6 puppies nestled against her belly. The 7th, the tiny one with the white star, lay curled beneath her chin like a secret only she and Noah truly understood. Noah sat beside her, still in his pajamas, cradling a warm cup of cocoa in his hands. He hadn't spoken again since that night, but his silence felt different now. It wasn't empty, it was full of meaning, full of peace. Hannah moved quietly around the room, eyes constantly drifting back to her son, her miracle, and the dog who had somehow become the bridge between who he was and who he might become. She had barely slept, but she didn't feel tired, not yet. There was too much to process, too much to feel, too much to protect. The phone rang just before noon. Not the cell, she rarely had signal anyway, but the old landline on the wall. It startled her. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick it up. Hello? A pause, then a voice, deep, controlled, too controlled. Ms. Marshall? Yes? This is Sergeant James Keller with the State Police K-9 unit. I understand you recently found a German Shepherd. Injured. Pregnant. Hannah's chest tightened. How did he know? Who told you that? That's not important, the voice said quickly. What is important is that the animal in your care is not a stray. She is state property. Her designation is K9R47. Her working name is Raya. Hannah gripped the phone tighter, eyes drifting toward the living room. Luna, Raya, was licking one of her pups, completely unaware that someone had just claimed ownership of her. I'm sorry, Hannah said slowly, but she had no ID. Just a tag with the name Luna. And she was buried, tied up, left to die in the woods. The line went quiet. When Keller spoke again, his voice was clipped, measured, like he was choosing every syllable. I'm not at liberty to discuss details over the phone, but I will be coming by tomorrow morning to retrieve the dog and her puppies. Please have them ready by 9 o'clock a.m. No, Hannah said before she even realized it. Her voice didn't shake. No, she repeated. This dog isn't just some piece of equipment. She's a living being. She's hurt. She's nursing. And she saved my son's life. Ms. Marshall, Keller said, his tone colder now. Refusing to return government property is a felony. I strongly advise you to cooperate. You'll need to bring proof, Hannah replied, defiant. Paperwork, badges, and an explanation for why a valuable police dog was chained and left to die. Another pause. I'll bring everything required, Keller said tightly. Be ready. The line went dead. Hannah stood there, frozen, the dial tone buzzing in her ear like a warning. When she finally turned back toward the living room, Noah was looking at her. He had heard. His hands were clenched around his cup. His face pale, and his eyes, those storm-colored eyes, were filled with something new. Fear. He pointed toward Luna, then toward the front door. Then he made a motion, a pulling away gesture. Hannah understood instantly. He was asking, are they going to take her from us? She knelt beside him, pulling him into her arms. No one is taking her, she whispered fiercely. Not without a fight. Luna stirred, lifting her head. Her amber eyes found Hannah's, then Noah's. And for just a moment, there was a flicker of something in her gaze. Not fear. Recognition. That night, after Noah had fallen asleep with his hand on Luna's paw, Hannah sat at the kitchen table with her laptop. She didn't know what she was searching for. She just knew that something didn't feel right. She started simple. Sergeant James Keller, State Police. Nothing. No articles, no press releases, no unit rosters. She tried again. K9R47 Raya. Still nothing. Then she typed Luna plus military tag. A few obscure pages popped up. Articles about military working dogs. Naming conventions. Acronyms. One headline caught her eye. Project Moonlight. The Secret Lives of Enhanced K9 Units. She clicked. The page was sparse, redacted names, hazy facts, but it spoke of private contractors working with government agencies to create dogs with advanced sensory capabilities, some through genetic manipulation, others through neural augmentation. Dogs that could sense danger before it happened, dogs that could communicate, not just with other dogs, but with people. A chill ran down Hannah's spine. Moonlight. Luna. She glanced toward the living room. Luna hadn't moved, but she was awake, watching her, and in her amber eyes, Hannah didn't just see gratitude. She saw awareness. Morning came, not with peace, but with weight. Hannah didn't sleep. Not really. She lay on the couch with her eyes open, one arm draped protectively over Noah's small body, listening to every creak of the house, every moan of the wind, every breath from Luna and her puppies nestled nearby. At 6 o'clock a.m., the light began to filter in, gray and cold. At 6:15, Hannah brewed a pot of coffee with trembling hands. At 6:30, she sat in the kitchen staring at the front door, waiting for the knock that would mean everything was about to fall apart. Noah was already awake, though he didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes told her everything. He knew. He always knew. And Luna hadn't slept either. She lay watchful and still, her body curled around her 7 puppies, but her ears alert. Her gaze never left the window, like she was waiting too. At 7:04, the phone buzzed. It was Officer Reyes, the kind-faced patrol officer from the diner who always left too small a tip and smiled too sadly. "I checked," she said. "There is a Sergeant Keller, but he's not part of any active K-9 unit. In fact, he's not even on active duty. He's been on administrative leave for over 6 months." Hannah's blood turned to ice. "So what is he then?" "That's the thing. No one's saying. His record's been scrubbed, but I found a link, an old article. He used to work with a private military contractor, Cerberus Security." Cerberus. The name hit Hannah like a punch to the stomach. She'd read that name in the article last night, the ones about enhanced dogs, about Project Moonlight. Officer Reyes's voice softened. "Hannah, I think you're in danger. Real danger. If Keller's coming for that dog, it's not because he wants to help her." Hannah looked at Luna, now standing slowly, quietly over her pups. There was no panic in her posture, just readiness. "She's not just a dog," Hannah whispered. "She's something else. And my son, Noah, he connects to her. It's like they can feel each other." A pause on the other end. Then Officer Reyes said what Hannah didn't want to admit. "You need to get out. Now." By 7:45, the decision was made. Hannah didn't know where she'd go. But anywhere was safer than staying. She packed only the essentials: baby formula for the puppies, gauze, Luna's meds, Noah's coat, and her old journal, where she'd begun documenting everything, just in case. Just in case someone needed to know what happened, if she didn't make it through. Noah helped without being asked. He placed each puppy gently into a box lined with warm towels. He carried it like it was holding something sacred. And maybe it was. The 7th pup, the one with the white star, nestled itself against the edge of the box, staring up at Noah with wide, impossibly alert eyes. Noah stared back. Neither blinked. Hannah wrapped Luna in a blanket and whispered, "You have to trust me, girl. We're leaving. You've got to stay quiet. Can you do that?" Luna licked her hand once, then limped silently to Noah's side. Ready. At 8:16 a.m., they slipped out the back door. The sky was still clouded, the trees damp, and the ground soggy from the night's storm. They moved through the brush, away from the main road, keeping low. Hannah had parked her car a street over, behind Mrs. Peterson's old shed. They were 10 feet from it. When Noah stopped. Frozen. He pointed. A black SUV had pulled into their driveway. From it stepped a tall, broad-shouldered man in uniform, Sergeant James Keller. Noah didn't make a sound, but his body went stiff. His eyes locked on the man. And Luna, she growled, not loud, low, like thunder beneath the earth. "Go!" Hannah breathed. "We have to go!" She shoved the box into the back seat, lifted Luna in beside it, and turned the key. The engine sputtered, then roared to life, too loud. Keller's head turned sharply. He saw them, and smiled. The chase began. Hannah tore down the street, tires slipping on the wet pavement, Noah clutching the door with one hand and the box of puppies with the other. Through the rearview mirror, Hannah saw Keller's SUV pull out behind them, closing the distance.
He's following us, she said through gritted teeth. I don't know how, but he knows.
Noah didn't answer. He was watching Luna, and Luna was watching the road ahead. Suddenly, Noah leaned forward and pointed to a narrow forest road, half-hidden, overgrown, unused.
There?
Hannah asked. He nodded once. Trusting him, she turned sharply onto the path. The car bumped wildly. Branches scraped the windows. Keller didn't follow. Too narrow. Too dense. They were alone. 10 minutes later, Hannah stopped the car near an old trailhead. They couldn't keep driving. The path was ending.
I think we have to go on foot, she whispered.
Noah was already out, holding the box close, the star pup snuggled in his arms. Luna followed, limping but strong. They hiked through the undergrowth, deeper and deeper. And that's when Hannah heard it. The low hum of an engine. Another vehicle, coming from ahead, cutting them off. They were being herded.
Trap,
she whispered.
They're boxing us in.
She turned back, but behind them, faint in the distance, she saw another black SUV creeping up the trail they had left behind. They were surrounded.
There's nowhere to go,
she breathed. But Luna suddenly darted left, into the trees. Noah followed her instantly. Hannah hesitated only a second before running after them. They reached a clearing, and there, hidden behind a curtain of vines and moss, was the mouth of an old cave. Dark, forgotten, safe. They slipped inside just as the sound of engines grew louder. The cave was cool, damp, and narrow, but dry. Hannah pressed her back to the wall, breathing hard.
Shh, she whispered. Don't move. Don't make a sound.
Noah nodded, clutching the star puppy close. Luna stood at the mouth of the cave, head tilted, listening. Then something strange happened. Her eyes began to glow. A soft, bluish light pulsed from them. Dim, gentle, but unmistakable. It lit the cave like moonlight on water. Hannah stared.
What? What is that?
Noah didn't look surprised. He touched Luna's head and closed his eyes. The glow grew brighter, and then the air shimmered, like heat rising off asphalt. Shapes appeared, shadows, movement, dozens of dogs, ghostly outlines glowing like Luna, standing guard at the entrance of the cave. It wasn't real. It was an illusion, but it looked real enough. Outside they heard shouting, footsteps, and then screams, the sound of people running, retreating, afraid. The glow slowly faded. The cave fell silent. Noah opened his eyes and smiled. Hannah knelt down beside Luna, still trembling from what she had witnessed.
You did that?
Luna blinked slowly, then turned to nuzzle the star-marked puppy in Noah's arms. The pup looked up, its tiny eyes opened too soon, and glowing, just like hers. The cave was silent now. The echoes of retreating footsteps had long faded into the forest beyond, swallowed by trees and wind. And in the stillness, something else rose, a warmth. Not from fire, but from the presence of life, huddled close and breathing together. Hannah sat with her back against the stone wall, arms wrapped around Noah, heart still racing. She stared across the darkness at Luna, her chest moving steadily, her ears twitching with each sound, and nestled against Luna's side, smaller than the rest, but somehow brighter, lay the star-marked puppy. Its tiny form glowed faintly, just like its mother's eyes had moments ago. The light was subtle, no brighter than moonbeams, but it bathed the chamber in something almost sacred, Noah stroked the puppy's head gently.
"She's not like the others, is she?"
Hannah whispered. Noah looked up, then nodded. Then he did something he hadn't done since the day Luna was found. He spoke again. Just 3 words, quiet, soft, certain. "She shows things." Hannah's breath caught.
"What do you mean?"
Noah's fingers brushed the puppy's chest, where the white star glistened like frost in candlelight. Then, slowly, the air shimmered again. Right in front of them, a small, moving image unfolded, floating in midair, as if projected from the tiny creature itself. Not on a screen, not a dream. Something else entirely. A vision. Hannah gasped. It was the forest, a map of trees, winding trails, streams. Then the image shifted, showing a path leading away from the cave, curving past a ravine and out toward what looked like a cabin. Noah nodded at the projection. "That's where we should go," he said, voice barely a whisper.
"You see this?"
Hannah asked, wide-eyed.
"The puppy's showing us the way?"
Another nod. Noah wasn't surprised at all, as if he'd felt it coming. Luna reached her nose toward the puppy, licking it once with infinite tenderness. And the light dimmed. The vision faded. But the direction it had offered stayed branded in Hannah's mind. They had a way out, a chance, hope. They waited until dusk. When the golden light of evening melted into the forest like honey poured into shadows, they quietly emerged from the cave. Luna walked slowly but steadily, leaning slightly on Hannah's leg. Her wounds were still healing, but her body no longer trembled with pain. There was strength in her again. Noah carried the box of puppies with both hands, careful not to jostle them. But the star puppy? It didn't sleep like the others. It peered over the edge of the box, alert, watchful, its glow a quiet lantern in the deepening twilight. They followed the memory of the vision, stepping where it had shone, turning when Noah pointed. Every twist of the path seemed to match what the star puppy had revealed, and then, just as the last light was draining from the sky, they saw it. A cabin. Old but sturdy. Set deep in the woods, far from the road. Hidden. Exactly where the vision had ended. Inside, it smelled of pine and dust and forgotten time. But it was dry, safe, and warm enough with the fire Noah helped Hannah build from leftover kindling and logs stacked near the hearth. They laid blankets across the wooden floor, a shallow dish of warm water for Luna, a second one for the puppies. The star pup nuzzled into Luna's side again, content, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Hannah breathed. No sirens, no threats, no heavy knocks at the door. Just the sound of her son humming softly as he stroked Luna's fur. And then from the box, the star puppy stirred again. This time, it climbed out, wobbly but determined. Its little legs moved with strange coordination for one so young. It made its way to Noah and placed one paw gently on his arm. Noah froze. Then he leaned in, forehead to forehead with the pup. Their eyes closed. And for a moment, everything went silent. Then, projection. The air shimmered again, and this time, it wasn't a map. It was a memory. Hannah saw flashes. Luna, not buried but running, through a dark corridor. Bright lights, harsh voices, cold metal floors. A man, Keller, shouting something. A cage, a needle, then black, then pain, then running again, into the forest. Blood on her paws, a tree root, a stumble, then silence. Then Noah. His small hand, the mud, his heartbeat, the connection. That was when it happened. That's when something between them locked into place. The vision vanished. Noah opened his eyes slowly and whispered, "She's part of me now." Hannah didn't speak. She couldn't. Tears blurred her eyes. Her son, the boy who hadn't spoken in months, now sat in front of her, bathed in pale light, whispering to a glowing puppy that showed dreams like memories. And behind it all, Luna watched them. Her golden eyes calm, wise, knowing. Outside, the stars began to emerge, quiet and endless. Inside, 7 puppies slept safely beside their mother, and one little boy, silent no more, watched over them like a promise made flesh. Weeks passed. The leaves turned from green to gold, and the cabin in the woods slowly became more than a hiding place. It became a home. Noah spoke more now, not always in sentences, sometimes just words, whispers, or gestures. But his voice was steady, real, and warm. Every time he called Luna's name, she would lift her head and wag her tail like a promise had been kept. The star-marked puppy grew stronger each day, always close to Noah's side, like his little shadow. They shared a connection that words could never explain. They didn't need to. Some bonds are older than language. Hannah still watched the horizon sometimes, still feared the sound of engines on gravel. But no one came. Not Keller. Not anyone else from the shadows they'd escaped. Whether they had given up or were simply waiting, she didn't know. And maybe she never would. But for now, they were safe. One evening, as the sun melted into the treetops, Hannah sat on the porch with Luna at her feet and Noah curled beside her, his head on her lap. The wind whispered through the trees. Somewhere deep inside the forest, an owl called out, soft, low, and timeless. Noah looked up. "She's not just a dog," he said suddenly. Hannah smiled. "No, sweetie. She's family." He shook his head gently, eyes wide and knowing. "She's light. She found me." Tears pricked at Hannah's eyes, because it was true. Luna hadn't just been found. She had found them, a broken boy, a tired mother, a family fraying at the edges. And in the darkness, she had become their light. Not because of what she could do, but because of what she chose to do. To trust, to protect, to love, even after the world had buried her.